Hello and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel, brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. In this video, I will show you how to make this very cute lace panel knit poncho. This is a beginner pattern and a great introduction to simple lace stitches. The body of the poncho itself is in garter stitch, but then you have this center panel section, which is made up of a very simple lace panel stitch pattern. What I'm going to do in this video is show you how to do all of the stitches you need to know how to do to make this really great poncho, and you could have this poncho done in no time, I promise. This is a free pattern available over on redheart.com. I will put a link right down there in the video description box below, and while you're down there, please smash that like button, as my kids say, to let me know you enjoyed this video. In the pattern, you will find a list of the materials you need, but I will tell you right now, you do need to use Red Heart Unforgettable Yarn, which comes in so many wonderful, beautiful colors to choose from that I'm excited to see what you guys go with here. And then you will also need a pair of size 9 circular needles. Now you will want to use circular needles because when you make this poncho, you work the length of the poncho, so from this end here all the way to this end here, and all of those stitches are going to be on your needle. That's why you need to use circulars. So we aren't working in the round, but we want those circulars so that we can have all of those stitches fit on our needle comfortably. Once you have the pattern and your materials, join me back here. We're going to learn how to cast on, how to work our stitches for the garter stitch, how to work the lace panel stitches, and then how to join the two panels together to finish your poncho. Let's jump in. I think this poncho is so stinking adorable. It's designed by Heather Ladinsky, who's one of my favorite Red Heart designers. We start off making this poncho at the bottom. So we will start off with some basic garter stitch down here at this bottom before we jump into the lace center portion of the poncho. Now this poncho is made up using garter stitch on either side of the center 41 lace stitches. For the size that you're going to make, you want to take a look at the pattern and choose the size you want to make, and then follow along with the numbers for that corresponding size. In order for us to begin with garter stitch, we need to cast on our stitches. Now for this video, I'm going to use a smaller number of stitches than what you would use in your actual poncho because I don't think it's necessary for me to work up an entire poncho panel. I just want to make sure I have enough stitches to have some garter stitch on either side of the 41 lace stitches. Now cast on, what does that mean? We're going to use a long tail cast on, and that's where we put the stitches on our needle and actually begin to work into them. So let me show you how to do a slip knot and the long tail cast on. The long tail cast on is one of my favorite cast ons to do when I'm getting ready to work into garter stitch. The biggest thing is you need to make sure you have a tail that is long enough for the number of stitches you're going to cast on. One way to guesstimate the appropriate size of tail is to make your tail 3 times the width of your project. So whatever your poncho width is going to be, make sure your tail is about 3 times that width, and then you will put your slip knot at that point. So let's just guesstimate that that's about good for what I'm going to do. I will put the tail of my yarn in the palm of my hand, take my working yarn, wrap it around my forefinger and middle finger. When I come back up, I'll cross over. When I cross over, I turn my hand, go underneath this front loop and grab that back loop and take it off. As I separate the two tails of the yarn, you'll see that this little knot will start to tighten up and we will get a slip knot directly onto our needle. That counts as 1 stitch. Now to do the long tail cast on, we want to position the yarn so that the tail is over our thumb like so, and the working yarn is over our finger. Now, if you grab the two outside sections, just to give yourself something to hang on to, you're in a slingshot position. And this is where we begin to do the long tail cast on. You will start over here at the bottom of your thumb, go up your thumb, swivel around to the tip of your finger, go down your finger. Then you have this nice little window right here that's created between your thumb. And so you'll swing that needle right through that window and then let the yarn fall off your thumb. Readjust, we're back in the position we started with, and we do it all over again. Up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. Up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. Up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. Up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. You're going to continue on doing this, making sure you cast on the number of stitches that you need for the size poncho you are making. Once you get all your stitches cast on, they look a little bit like this, and it's really nice and neat and tidy, and hopefully they're not too tight. Once you have your stitches cast on, you now want to go into garter stitch for 8 rows. And garter stitch, when you're working back and forth, is simply knitting every row. So if you've never worked with circulars before, this is what you'll do. You'll take the needle with all of your stitches on it, and you'll put it into your left hand, just like you normally would when you knit. You will take the corresponding right hand needle and put it into your right hand, and then go ahead and begin knitting onto the right hand needle from the left hand needle, just as you normally would. The only difference here is that the 2 needles just happen to be joined at the bottom. You'll notice I'm just going to each stitch as if to knit as I normally would. Go in as if to knit, yarn over, come out the stitch and off. In, make sure you go into the stitch, around, out. I'm going to push these up before I jump off. And off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. Now I will put my yarn in my other hand because I know some of you are also continental knitters. I want to make sure you can see how that goes. It's the same process. I'm just holding the yarn in my other hand. So in, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. Make sure you don't split the yarn as you're working along. Just keep doing this knit stitch all the way down. And you're going to do this for a total of 8 rows, okay? It says we work 8 rows in garter stitch, and that means we will knit every single row. Once you have 8 rows in garter stitch, we're going to place markers so that we can indicate where the center lace stitches are, and we will begin the lace stitch pattern. Once you have your 8 rows of garter stitch complete, it's time to add stitch markers and begin the lace stitch panel. Remember that I am doing fewer stitches than what you're doing, so mine is a lot smaller. I need you to reference your pattern to find out how many stitches you need to knit before you place your marker, and then you'll have 41 stitches for the lace panel, place your marker, and then knit to the end. For my little swatch here, I have to knit 10, place my marker, and then I'll go into the lace panel, place my marker, and knit to the end. So let's go ahead and jump in and get this going. I will start off by knitting 10 stitches for my little swatch here. Remember, once again, you need to look at the pattern and make sure you are knitting across the number of stitches that you need to knit in order to make the size you're making. And as I'm talking here, I have lost count. So let's go back. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, one more. I have to do 10. Once you have knit to the number of stitches you need to do, it's time to place a marker. So I'm just going to take one of these cool little markers and I'm just going to place it directly onto my right hand needle. That's all I have to do. I can ignore it now. The next part of the instructions say that over the next 41 stitches, we are going to work the lace stitch pattern. And if we look at the pattern stitches, the lace stitch pattern for row 1 has us begin by doing an SSK and a yarn over 4 times. So an SSK is when you are working a decrease with 2 stitches, and then the yarn over will give us our increase. So that way our stitch count doesn't change. To do an SSK, take your right hand needle, go into the stitch as if to knit, and slip it off. Go in as if to knit, and slip it off the next one. Take your left hand needle, go into the front leg of those 2 stitches you slipped, and then knit those 2 stitches together. So that's an SSK, and now we need to do a yarn over. So we bring our yarn between our needles and then back up over top our right hand needle. So that is 1. We need to do that 4 times. So we'll slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, take our left hand needle, put it in the front leg of those 2 stitches, and be careful, don't let this yarn over fall off. As you come around your needle, come out the stitch and off, and then do another yarn over. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, put your left hand needle in the front leg of those 2 stitches. Don't let your yarn over fall off as you knit those 2 stitches together. Then you do a yarn over. So that was 3. I have to do 1 more. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, left hand needle in the front leg of those 2 stitches, knit those 2 stitches together, and then yarn over. Don't forget that final yarn over. You'll notice now that it says we need to knit 8 stitches. So we will simply knit 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. In the pattern now, you'll notice that you have the end of a bracket. And what that means is that everything that's inside of those brackets, you will do for the number of times outside of the bracket. So for example, we just did our SSK yarn over 4 times and then knit 8 stitches. And all of that is inside the bracket, and outside the bracket, it says to do that twice. So we've just completed it once, which means we need to do it 1 more time. This time I'll hold the yarn in my other hand, so that way those of you who want to see Continental can see that. And I need to start off with my SSK yarn over 4 times. So I slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, take my left hand needle in front of those 2 front legs, and then knit them together. Yarn over. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, left hand needle into those 2 stitches. Make sure you don't accidentally split the yarn. That's what I'm accidentally doing right here, okay? And then knit those 2 together. Yarn over. So that was 2. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, into the front leg of those 2 stitches, knit them together, yarn over. That was 3. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, front leg of those 2 stitches, knit them together, and that's 4. Make sure you don't forget that last yarn over. Now I will knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that completes my bracket twice. Now I need to do an SSK yarn over 4 more times, and then I'll finish with a knit 1. So I do slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, front leg, knit them together, yarn over. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, front leg, knit them together, yarn over. Slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, front leg, yarn over, knit them together. I'm sorry, so that was the yarned over my needle, which knit them together, and there's my yarn over. So I slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, front leg, knit them together, yarn over. Now I will finish off, if I correct here, I've just done that 4 times. So there's my slip as if to knit, there's my SSK yarn over, SSK yarn over, SSK yarn over, SSK yarn over. So there's 4 times. I finish with a knit 1. Now I'll take my second marker, place it directly onto my right hand needle, and then I will knit to the end. Now that I've knit to the end of my row, all I need to do is move on to the next row, keeping the outside stitches of the marker in garter stitch and the stitches inside or in between these markers in the lace panel stitch, okay? So we will keep this fairly simple here. I will knit to my marker, which is convenient, which is one of the great things about having the marker there, is that I don't have to sit here and count these stitches each time. I know that all I have to do is just knit directly over to the marker, because that's my big clue of, hey, right here, some stitches change. I love using stitch markers in both knitting and crochet. When I get to my marker, I take it and I just slip it off my left hand needle and move it over to my right hand needle. And now I'll follow along with row 2 of the lace panel. So the lace panel for row 2 has to start off with a knit 1, and then we're going to purl 7. And we will do this, we'll purl 7 and then knit 9, and then we will do that 2 times. So to purl, I bring my yarn forward, go into the stitch as if to purl, around my needle and out. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, 7. Ha! And now I need to knit 9. So I'll bring my yarn back. And now I need to knit 9. So I'll bring my yarn back between my needles and I will knit 9 stitches. Now remember, all of that is in a bracket and it says to do that twice. So if we've done it just one time, we have to do it one more time. I'll hold my yarn in my opposite hand this time around. We have to purl 7, so I bring my yarn forward and I purl 7 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now I need to knit 9, so I bring my yarn back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then I finish off with a purl 7 and a knit 1. So I bring my yarn between my needles and I purl 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bring my yarn back between my needles and I knit 1. Then I slip my marker over and I will simply knit to the end of my row. And that completes my row 2, which is a wrong side row. And I will then move on to row 3. When I turn my work and move on to row 3 and I look at the pattern, I notice that for row 3, all I'm really doing is repeating row 1. And then for row 4, I'm repeating row 2. That's the same thing. It goes back and forth until you get past row 8. Once you get past row 8 and move on to row 9, that's when the stitches change and no longer are you doing SSKs, but we're doing knit 2 togethers. So what I want you to do now is, because you know how to do row 1 and 2, and rows 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are just a repeat of those 2 rows, finish those rows up and get to row 9 so I can show you how to do row 9, okay? Once you get done with row 8, it's time to move on to rows 9 through 16, which are just a repeat of each other. It goes 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Very similar to what you just did with rows 1 through 8. Only we're changing up the stitches a little bit. Let me show you how to do these 2 rows, rows 9 and 10, because then you can carry on and get through rows up to row 16 with no problem once you know these stitches. So here we go. by this point, your work looks a little bit like this, right? This is what the center panel looks like. And so we are getting ready to change up how these stitches are worked. We are going to go ahead and do row 9. So I am going to knit to my marker, just like we've been doing all along, keeping these outside stitches in garter stitch. And then when we get to our marker, that's when the action happens and we have to follow along with the lace stitch. So I have slipped my marker, and on row 9, we start off with a knit 1. So I will knit 1, and then I go into a knit 8, and then yarn over, knit 2 together 4 times. You ready? So we're going to knit 8. So that was knit 1, and then I'll knit 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now I go in to yarn over and then knit 2 together 4 times. So I will yarn over my needle, and now I will knit 2 together. So I will go into the second stitch and the first stitch on my left hand needle and knit those 2 stitches together. So that was 1. Yarn over my right hand needle and then knit 2 together. So there's 2. Yarn over my right hand needle, knit 2 together. There's 3. Yarn over my right hand needle and then knit 2 together. So there's 4. Once you've done those, you'll notice you're at a bracket again. That means everything that's within that bracket, we need to repeat. And so it says everything in the bracket is done twice. So we've done it once, we need to do it once again. The bracket has to start off with knit 8. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and now we jump into our yarn over, knit 2 together for a total of 4 times. Make sure you don't split your yarn when you're doing your knit 2 togethers. So there's 1, yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together. So that's 4, and I can go back here, and if I just look for my yarn overs right here, I know that I have 4. So there's my yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together. Now that I have repeated all of that was in the bracket twice, I finish off with a knit 8. So I will knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Slip my marker and then work in garter stitch all the way to the end. So now you know how to do row 9, 11, 13, and 15. Let's now learn how to do row 10, and once you know how to do that, you'll know how to do row 12, 14, and 16. So I've turned my work. I'm jumping into row 10 now. I will keep the outside stitches in garter stitch still. By now I'm sure you know that, but I want to make sure that I'm saying that out loud. So I keep these outside stitches in garter stitch all the way to my marker. And when I get to my marker, I slip it over. And now on row 10, I start off with knit 9 and then purl 7. And I will do that twice. So I will knit 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then purl 7. So I bring my yarn between my needles and I purl 7. And that said twice, so I bring my yarn between my needles and I will knit 9 again. and purl 7. Once I've done that, I finish up with a knit 9. Slip my marker and knit to the end. Now that you know how to do row 10, you also know how to do row 12, 14, and 16. Pretty easy, right? So what's really great about this lace stitch is even though the entire lace stitch is a multiple of 16 rows, it's rows 1 through 16, rows 1 through 8 are, just, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then rows 9 through 16, you alternate those 2 rows. So you really only need to know 2 different action rows, right, for each little section. If you think about 1 through 8 as one section and 9 through 16 as a second section, there's only 2 action rows that you need to think about. Pretty easy. The biggest difference between the 2 is obviously the rows 1 through 8 uses SSK. Rows 9 through 16 uses knit 2 together, but then also the placement of those lace stitches, having them move into a different place, gives the different look of the lace. Let's take a look at the original sample so you can see what I mean. As you look down here at the start of the poncho, we have our initial garter stitch rows, and then we have rows 1 through 8 where we do SSKs, and these SSKs and the yarn overs next to them give the illusion of leaning to the left. Not illusion, these stitches really do lean to the left. As you move on to rows 9 through 16, you have stitches over here for the lace bit where they lean to the right and they're side by side with yarn overs. And so these stitches that lean towards the right, those are knit 2 togethers. You can see for the entire panel, you have SSKs, knit 2 togethers, SSKs, knit 2 togethers, SSKs, knit 2 togethers, so on and so forth. So as you are repeating those 16 rows of the lace stitch panel, you are alternating where those lace stitches lean, and the spot that they are, because you'll notice these ones are on the outside, the SSKs are on the outside, and the knit 2 togethers are more towards the center bit. You continue on in the pattern working these 16 lace stitch rows until your piece measures the measurement that's on your pattern. You want to make sure that you do end on either a row 8 or a row 16. Once you've completed one panel, it's time to start the second one, and you'll make it identical to how you made the first. So you're going to have 2 panels that are identical to each other. Once you have those 2 panels complete, so they're all the way up to the measurement as indicated in the pattern, you've bound off loosely, all you're going to do is seam the shoulder bits of those panels together, leaving 12 inches open for your head to fit through for the neck. Now, seaming together 2 garter stitch panels is not that difficult. You could whip stitch them together, you could slip stitch, crochet them together, you could do anything you want. So I'm going to show you how to do a whip stitch join, so that way you know how to join the 2 panels together, okay? Using the same yarn you used for your poncho, you want to thread that into a bent tip tapestry needle. Just give yourself a good length of yarn and thread that into your bent tip tapestry needle. You're going to match up the 2 lace panels corner to corner, just like so. And we are doing this on the inside of the lace panels. So the right sides are facing each other and we're working on the inside. Okay, so this is our non-public side. You want to go ahead, and what you will do is you will just take one edge of each side and you simply will just start to whip stitch them together, just like so, all the way down, going stitch for stitch. And all this will do is just join the piece together in such a way that it won't fall apart, and it should be virtually invisible as these stitches are just really easy on there. Now, could you join this in a different type of, like maybe mattress stitch that joins two garter edges? Absolutely. If you want to go that far, you absolutely can do that. But I feel like the whip stitch is good enough for this. You would do this whip stitch just like this, all the way down, making sure you leave 12 inches open for the neck. So you would work down, leave an opening, join, and then work to the other end. And once it's all done, when this opens up, it would be invisible. This yarn is a little bit different color, so I would try and make sure I match up the two purples, but I wanted you to see how those stitches look. That's why I wanted to make sure I grabbed the blue. Once you do that for the shoulders, the next thing to do is to seam up the sides. And you don't have to seam up the sides if you don't want to, but if you want to make it so that the poncho has like armholes and it just keeps together a little bit more, that's where you can seam up the sides. And for that, it's really easy to seam up using garter stitch invisible join mattress stitch. I'll show you how to do that. Now, as you're joining together the vertical edge of garter stitch, it's really easy to actually make that join invisible. In order to do that, we are going to take our two edges and put them up side by side, making sure that each garter stitch ridge is next to the other. The garter stitch itself, when you make it, you know it has these nice little ridges, and you have a nice scoop and a hill for each particular stitch. So if we were going to seam this up, on one side we would want to only work into the hills. On the other side we'd only want to work into the scoops. Okay, that's how one of my teachers explained it to me once in one of my knitting classes. So what I'm going to do is I'm using a contrasting color so you can really see how I'm doing this. And if you were doing this, obviously you're not going to have a tail. So right up here at this point, you would join with the figure 8. So I'm going to do that down here just so you can see. So I'm coming down here at the very bottom and I'm just bringing my yarn in this way. And I'm coming over to the corresponding ridge. So if it were up in the middle of the row, it would be the corresponding ridge. Okay, got it so far. And so what I have here, I have like a figure 8 going on. See that? So when I come back over here to this side, what I'm going to do is I have these nice hills going on right here. Okay, so my scoops are the ones that are like upside down U's, and my hills right here, or no, my scoops. When I pick this up, I'm going to now start working into the ridges of the garter stitch and only picking up the scoops on one side and the hills on the other side. As I look over here, I can see that my scoop is like a U and the hill is an upside down U. Because my yarn came out over here, I'm going to jump over here and going into this first ridge, I will pick up the hill and bring my yarn through. As I come over here to the corresponding side, I want to pick up the scoop. So it's the upside down U right here at the very edge. Okay, so I'm going to pick up that one and bring my yarn through. Now, if I come back over here and I go up one ridge above where my yarn came out, I will pick up the hill over here. Come over here where my yarn came out, go up one and pick up the scoop. Come over here, pick up the hill, and come over here and pick up the scoop. Make sure you get the right one. You'll notice that I'm not doing these really super tight here at the beginning. I'm just making sure that they're going through really nice and loose, because as I get going along, I can pull the tail and the working yarn and it'll bring this together. So you can see here I've pulled those nice and neat, and all I have to do is just pull this, and what that does is it makes the join come together virtually seamless. It looks as if one ridge flows into the ridge of the next. And because I'm not using the same yarn as I used in the pattern, that's why this is really, you can see my yarn, but if that yarn was the same color, you wouldn't be able to see it. So that's how you do a seamless garter stitch join on the vertical. Now, as I mentioned, you don't have to do this side join for your poncho if you don't want to. If you want to leave it open, you absolutely could do that, but the designer did write it out to have the side join. There you have it, you guys. You know how to do the lace panel knit poncho. This is super adorable. Once again, each rectangle is the same on either side, so you're just making 2 rectangles. You'll seam it up here at the top. Do a nice join on the vertical garter stitch if you want. And you could just throw this on over any type of, maybe a long button-up shirt or a dress or anything. I mean, it is so cute. And with all the various colors that are available with Red Heart Unforgettable, the options are endless for this particular poncho. I hope you enjoyed this video and you don't find this very intimidating. I know those lace stitches can be a little bit scary, but as long as you make sure for every decrease you do, whether it's an SSK or a knit 2 together, you do have your yarn over there, you'll be just fine. I hope that you will make this poncho and share with me over on social media. Just use hashtag MarleyBird and I'll find this poncho and I'll give you 2 thumbs up if you make sure that you give me a thumbs up on this video as well. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, and this is the lace panel knit poncho. Thanks everybody, bye. Everything you need to know about knitting or crochet can be found right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Learn with Marley Bird. Visit youtube.com/MarleyBird.